we're gonna start jumping. All right, so we want to cause our character to jump. In our GameData.json, we have a jump force, which is 10 here. So when I hit the space bar, I want to send a message, essentially an event, to the player physics that's gonna cause it to jump up. So I guess we can kind of go backwards here. If we have physics here, let's say we have an actual function jump. So here's our struct player physics. Implement this. Our update is really going to be where this is at. So, okay, inside of here, we're going to want to store like the jump command. So like players attempting to jump. And this is going to be a receiver. Just doesn't take anything in. Just like that. So we need a receiver. And we'll need to take in this event. And store it away. Okay, so we've stored away this jump command. When we receive this jump command inside of update here, I think it's just going to be a if let sum. We don't really care what this is. Oh, it's going to be an OK, not a sum, because it's a result that we get. So if somebody sends us a jump command, then we want to take our velocity and increase it by our jump velocity. Now our jump velocity, oh, we don't store that in, so let's take that in too. We're gonna want to, yeah, we want to take in our jump speed, and this is gonna be an F32 taking in so this doesn't affect our X at all, but it affects our Y. Is going to be a negative jump velocity. Like that. Now, if I take a look at our game data, yeah, our jump force is 10. So maybe instead of jump velocity, let's name this jump force. But then U can still be a jump velocity. There we go. This makes it a lot more understandable that it's going to be a negative here. Then when we jump, if we receive this, self.velocity plus equals to self.the jump velocity. Okay, and then we need to so let's now create this event and pass it in, and then trigger it on space. Okay, so that gives us the sender and receiver for this. We're going to want to store off the sender. Okay, so we're going to store off the jump command send, and then in the meanwhile for the physics, where is that? I see the red on here. I don't see where it is. We can just go look at problems. Okay, so here's the physics. It's going to need some kind of like jump command in here. Okay, so that's in the player. So in here, populate level, we're going to take in a jump command. Like that. And then up here to populate level, jump command receive. And then down here, I forgot this needs to be a clone. You can't clone this. Okay, so that's going to be a potential problem for this. Because we can't clone the jump command. What are you upset about? Oh, we need the jump force too. So the jump command and then the jump force. The jump force is game data dot jump force. There we go. Now here, there's a problem. Used a moved value jump command, and we can't. I can't clone this. We can't clone this because receivers cannot be cloned. There can only be one of them. So yeah, no method named clone for that. So this is, we have to figure out maybe a better way of creating the physics for this. And this is where the problem is that we're in this loop here. I need to move creating the player outside of the loop. And it doesn't actually need to be part of start. The only reason we have this. Let's actually, we're gonna populate the level, and then let's do a self insert player, like a create player. We're gonna have to pass in the grid. So maybe before I do that, let's actually go create it. Let's see. Okay, so create the player. And what do I need for that? Here's the player. We're going to grid add, next object insert, and insert the player. So cut you out. And put you right here. Okay, so what do we need? We need a mutable reference to the next object ID. We need the game data. We need these, okay, so we need these events. So player moved event send. We don't need to clone these anymore. This is only going to happen once now. All right, so the one event send, the died event, and then the jump command. Then we need a mutable reference to the grid. And we need the game, a mutable reference to the game objects. Okay, so that should be able to handle this. So then we can come up to the top here. This is in new. So we populate the level. After we populate the level, let's go ahead and add the grid. Or create the player. And then we can just like player moved event send, one event send, died event send, the jump command receive, the grid, and then the game objects. Now you are okay. So we moved these around. So then down for populate level, let's go ahead and remove these. We don't need you anymore. What am I missing? Oh, player moved event. And then, let's see, player moved event send. Okay, this one, okay, we do need to clone that. So player moved event send to create player. This needs to be cloned. And that's the only one. No errors. And then before it would actually work, in our keyboard. So let's do. Here's our key down events. So we can say, okay, if it's the return, Okay, so basically, if we're in the plain state, okay, so if we're in the plain state, and then also then if the key code space. Okay, so if we're plain and we hit the space bar, then we're going to send a message to have the player jump. We're going to get an error in case this this somehow fails for some reason. It shouldn't fail, but let's go ahead and we'll print this out. And there we go. Let's see if we jump now. We do. Okay, I somehow move backwards every single time I jump, so that's not cool. Let's run that again. I immediately reset my location. Yeah, that's really kind of weird. Oh, let's see. Is any of this happening? No, I don't see. My forward momentum is halted. Is in my physics, am I like colliding with the side? Okay, so like we're standing on the floor. Let's also do this. I bet this is what's happening.
If you're wondering what's happened, the computer that we have running our new
Error.
took off and went wild.
Semicolon. Yep, colliding. Okay, I saw that. Colliding with the side of the floor. So we need to make sure that we're colliding with this underneath. Because as soon as we start jumping, we're colliding with the floor because we're constantly falling into the floor. So we're always just like a tiny little bit down. Is that true? Or is this happening like, am I colliding with the floor above it? I think colliding with
Well, if you're wondering what's happened,
is checking to see if I'm like inside of it. Oh, I'm not checking. Okay, I'm doing, let's see. The bottom of me must be below. Must be greater than game object. Okay, so this is the problem. I'm technically in them. Like I'm technically inside. This means it's false. Is standing on floor. Must be a false. I'm kind of curious. What's my information here? It's like my location and then the game object. Let's take a look at what we got here. So when I jump, our location is 184x, 350y, and the floor is 150 and 400. And so the bottom of me is 350 plus whatever my height is. And I forget what that is. Let's add that in here. So location dot y plus height. As soon as this happens, Let's go ahead and panic and get ourselves out of here. Okay, so our location, our height is 400.5, which is just a tiny bit down below our the top of the floor. The velocity y is now a negative number. I think that's why this is failing right here, is standing on. Because it is standing on plus self-dot velocity to y. I really want to make this an absolute value to make sure that it's a positive number and not a negative number. If I do that, okay, I hit jump, and I don't think that worked. Let's take away the spike so we have more time. So hitting space is not doing anything at all. Now we saw that it was attempting to jump before, like we saw the jump. So this is now, we're not escaping out. I think that's our problem. We're colliding with the floor, which is resetting our y velocity. And it's resetting our y location. So if I'm jumping up, so I kind of want to have like a falling and a jumping state. When I hit the jumping, when I hit jump, I want to set our state to jumping. So I almost want to have like a little bit of a state management in here. And we're going to set this to initially to be false. Okay, so if we're standing on here, so if we're standing on the floor and we're not jumping, then we go ahead and do our normal standing thing. Okay, so if we are not jumping, that means we're falling downwards. Then we check to see, okay, are we standing on the floor? So I want to do this as like a separate if and like wrap it around this. So if we're going up, essentially, we don't need to do a floor as long, well, yeah, I guess this one thing in here in our, okay, in our try receive, we can't just blindly do this. We're gonna have to say if not self.jumping is jumping. So if we're not jumping, then we can do this, and then self.isJumping equals true. So then we become jumping, like we start jumping. If we stand on the floor, so if we're jumping and our velocity is now downwards, so I guess maybe that should be an update here. Our velocity is now upward, so we're jumping. So if self.velocity.y, if this is greater than 0, self.isJumping equals false. Well, that's not exactly true, is it? Because then that would allow me to jump again as soon as I started falling. I really want to hit the ground. So if I'm standing on the floor, which means I'm just like barely inside the floor, I'm standing inside the floor, I'm barely inside the floor, I want to reset my location up. I guess this really depends if I'm jumping or not. So we can do another check here. So if self.isJumping, if we're jumping and our velocity if our velocity is up, I wonder if I want to have like a finite state machine for jumping. I have standing, I have jumping, which is going upwards, and I have falling, which is going downwards. Because then I can do some checks here. We can start jumping if we're standing. We can hit the ground if we're falling. Or if we're standing. Is that right? I think that would right. So like basically if we're not jumping, let me try that. Let's create a little state machine in physics. So this is going to be a private state, so it's an enum. And these are going to be like our physics states. It's like, I guess, a jumping state. So we have standing, jumping, falling are the three states that we can be in. And we're going to start with, so that we don't need this is jumping anymore. It's not going to be a pure Boolean. We're going to have a jumping state is standing. So we're going to start with that. What are you upset about? Oh, you need to implement debug. Got you. Okay, then we go down to our physics. We have our jumping state. We set that to standing. If we update here, okay, so if we are jumping, if we are standing, okay, so if I think this is we want standard compare. Let's implement partial equal for this too, which will make this a lot nicer. Okay, so then we can just do if self dot jumping state, if that's equal to standing. So if we're standing, then we can go ahead and increase our velocity and set our jumping state. To jumping. In update, if we start falling down, so if this is equal to jumping state, jumping. So if we are jumping, we want to check to see our velocity. So if this is now a positive number, we are now going to be falling. Okay, so if we're falling and we hit the floor, so basically we're running along, we're standing on the ground. We know we're standing on the ground because if we're standing or we're falling, we can do this check. So I guess this would be if self dot jumping state is equal to, so if we're standing or we're falling. So if we're falling, and then we can do an and here. So let's go ahead and one of these must be true, and we must also be standing on the game object. We can go ahead and reset in here. In the case that we're falling, we'll set ourselves to be standing. Okay, so now we're standing. We also reset our location and our velocity. So we're no longer going down quite so heavily. Now, that being said, if we're, well, then the rest of it is just if we're colliding with. We shouldn't be colliding with it, although we might still be slightly outside of it. If we're colliding with the ground and we're in a jumping state, we probably want to teleport just above the ground and then continue from there. So if we're colliding with the ground, and then we can say, okay, if we're jumping, So if we're clearing the ground, we're not falling or standing, and we're jumping, let's go ahead and teleport ourselves just above whatever this ground is. And then continue on. Otherwise, we do this. So if we're not in a jumping state, we go ahead and kill our X velocity and we continue falling down. It's a lot of math, and like that is my weakest part about this. So we'll see if, okay, here we go. We can now jump. That's a good sign. All right, well, apparently I don't check quite far enough to the left so I can jump over that. But if I add in some gaps here now. Let's put in a space here. Put in some spaces there. See if you can jump out the first one and not the second. Ah, there we go. And okay, so I hit the end there. Can I actually jump over this? I can't. Okay, so all of that stuff is working perfectly. Excellent. All right, so we can jump. We can now jump properly. So, what does that mean for us? This is a little bit more complicated. Let's see if there's a way for us to like refactor this a little bit. Basically, if we're standing, or falling, I mean, I could just turn this into like a little function, is standing or falling. And we're standing on this. Okay. Let's do that. So is standing or falling. So all we're going to do is we're just going to return self dot jumping state is equal to that. So we're just abstracting this away into a single a name, essentially, is standing or falling. So then here, is standing or falling, and that. So it's a little bit easier to read. I mean, it's not perfect, but I think it works. And we can jump over there. We can win the game. Let's check to see if we can die by spikes still. And we probably also want to jump over a spike. Hey, there we go. All right, excellent. So we can still die by spikes. Perfect. We refactor you a little bit, and game object. I don't think we need to touch you very much at all. We do have some errors. Unreachable pattern. Is that because we're checking everything now? Which means we don't need you anymore. Excellent. Then we're going to come back into here. Player can jump now. And I think that's it. Like the game is now complete. As far as we're concerned, we can fully play it. We can start the game. We can jump, avoid obstacles, and get to the end.